remind me the age of the kids.
Yeah, 6, 5, and 2 years old. 6 and 5 are girls, and 2 is a boy.
Okay. You told me a cute story a couple of months ago or a year ago about finally breaking down and taking them to Pizza Hut. That there was some American restaurant in the neighborhood where you live, and like you've been resisting it. You didn't want to take them to Pizza Hut because it was, Western fast food.
I took them I think it was Pizza Hut, and it was the first time for them to have Pizza Hut. Like usually we used to order like gourmet pizza, the thin ones, but it was the first time to have the thick crust pan pizza, heavy cholesterol, and I can't seem to make them eat the thin pizza anymore. Like the gourmet nice pizza, which I love, they always go back to Pizza Hut.
And what's the transition been to Toronto? It's pretty abrupt going from Cairo.
Yeah, but it's been great. Like I thought it was going to be much harder, but we've blended in so easily. Of course, the first few days were tough with no nanny, no school, jet lag. The kids wake up 3 in the morning, so that was a nightmare. No grandparents, no furniture in the house. So first 3-4 days was a testy period. But then slowly you get into it. Fortunately, I was lucky with the placement of the apartment we have. We're right by the club, we're right by the park, we're right by the restaurants. So I was very fortunate in picking a good spot.
Do you think that there'll be enough years left for them to come on tour a little bit and come watch Dad play a few times?
Yeah, we've been talking about this, and me and Najla, my wife, have been talking about it. We're actually trying to find one tournament to start where I take one of the kids, the older ones. My 2 daughters, they play squash. They don't like squash, but they do play it. But the plan is to get one of them to go with me for one tournament, and then see how it goes. Maybe the next daughter will come to the next tournament, and we're actually trying to shoot for New York. But the problem is what they're gonna do. You know how squash players are between matches. We just hang out in the room all day and maybe just go down for food. But you can't expect a 6-year-old girl to follow that regiment. So, but we'll see. New York might be a good plan because it's going to be easy for me to keep her interested and keep her active.
Well, the best thing is you'll have, between the men's draw and the women's draw, you'll have 64 babysitters.
Yeah,
you will have no problem saying, "Oh, can you look after my daughter?"
Yeah. A few kids now on tour, especially like quite a few players have kids now, so I can just easily you stay with them for a few minutes.
Play with Nolan.
Yeah, I have few options. The European contact, or I can go with the American. So it's exciting now. All those squash players with kids now.
Did your move to Toronto have anything to do with politics and the situation that's unfolded over the last 3 years in Egypt?
To be honest, yeah, like I'm not going to fake it. The revolution happened in Egypt. It wasn't just about one issue. It was the people who were fed up with everything. You have Egypt has so much wealth, and it's being controlled by a number of people. Whether you're talking at the private sector, public sector, any sector, education sector, sports sector, so the same. You have a handful of people who are people of trust, not people of knowledge, being put in that position, holding on to that position for dear life, don't want to move, and the rest of us have to just watch them get fat and rich over it. And I felt it. I've been always taught by my parents not to depend on anybody, not to trust anybody. Depend on myself, not wait for favors from anybody. I've never took a wild card in my life in squash. Never played test matches to get into a team. Lost a lot of representation from my country because of it, but my dignity is intact. And I've always had issues because I didn't play the rules. I remember, I don't want to sound bitter, but I'm just saying how it is. I remember growing up, people were always telling me, "Oh, you're a good player, you can always be world champion, but you don't have it in you." I became world champion. People started fighting me for it. Now that I've hit my 30s, people are saying, "Oh, you're getting too old, you need to retire." I've always had people try and push me over the limit, push me away, but all they did was give me a reason to fight on. And I don't want my kids to have that. It's good that you can have the fighting spirit, but it shouldn't be all. You should also have equal opportunity to start with. I know that because my reputation is intact, my dignity is intact. When all said and done, I'm still the same person. them fighting me, fighting my career, fighting my personality, whether they're squash federation presidents, whether they're national coaches, whether they're players, they're always changing because eventually they will be cut out. It's all a lie what they're doing. They will be changed, but I truly believe that I'm the same person. I can always go back to it, but I need to give my kids a head start. Thankfully, my squash gave me the opportunity to travel around the world and see how things are supposed to be done. But this is one of the excellent things squash gave me. Squash gave me insight to different cultures and countries, gave me open doors for me in terms I met very interesting people, very powerful people, very different people. It exposed me to different cultures and different just lifestyles. It just opened my eyes to the world. And I want to give my daughters this opportunity. So if they're not going to be professional athletes, at least I can choose a place for them to be exposed to it without having them have to like travel to it, and just be grown up in a neutral society where all people are equal. And then one day, hopefully, they can go back to their country and change it with their generation.
What was it like to be a superstar in your sport? You are a four-time world champion. You've won every major championship. You've been number one for 33 months. I mean, your accolades are in the footsteps of the best: Hashim Khan, Jahangir Khan, Jansher Khan, Jeff Hunt, Jonah Barrington, Amr Shabana. That's the list. And yet in Cairo in Egypt, were you a star?
And I hated it. Like, I'm very proud of my achievements. I'm very proud because a lot of people close to me, my parents, my wife, my coaches put a lot of effort. Close peers of mine who helped me out during my troubled times. I feel very proud for myself and proud for them that I was able to achieve what they hoped for me. But in the same time, I hated it because, John, you've been to Egypt. You know how big squash is in Egypt. We're famous in Egypt just like basketball players are famous in America. We're more famous in Egypt than squash is in Egypt. And I hated it for that. People know me and know my face, know my name, but they don't really know exactly how I play. Thing is, it's very weird. In Egypt, they treat everybody like you scored the final basket in a basketball game or the final touchdown. It's all like a huge explosion, and then it goes away. It's not like there's continuity of showing our matches, and it's constant, and you win, and then you get to a certain level, and then the perks come with it, and the pressures come with it. No, it's all like a huge explosion, and it goes. A huge explosion, and it goes. And I didn't like that. And at the end, I realized I was being famous for not being a squash player and people seeing me play, but I was just famous for those huge media explosions that were being thrust in my face. And at the end, I will tell you something, I don't think I've ever said it on record before. My fourth World Open Championship, when I won it, I had around 100 media people, around 30 Egyptian channels waiting for me in the VIP airport and at the airport at the VIP terminal in Egypt. I took my bags from the belt and I took the back door out. And I left everybody waiting there. And I think that was the final cut with me and the situation. Everybody, of course, I got very heated phone calls. You're finished, you're done, you can't do this to us, who do you think you are? I'm like, I am who I am. I felt I'm done with this sort of campaign. You're not gonna use me as a way to just, as an explosion. I'm not an explosion. I'm an athlete who plays squash for a living. You want me, you show me while I'm doing my best, while I'm playing, whether I'm winning or losing, I'm a squash player. I'm not a means for you to put me on TV and just parade me around for 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and then on to the next one. So I just put a cut to that. And that's what I love about the revolution, because people had enough. I had enough, I did my part. The Egyptian people had enough of being forgotten and just being used, so they've had enough, that's why they did it. It wasn't a revolution against Mubarak. Mubarak I've met, he's a very respectful person. He's actually, in that category, one of the nicest of them. It's the kitchen that's the problem. The kitchen around the president, and they're still around. General Sisi is an amazing guy. He took care of 80 million Egyptian people, but what I fear is the kitchen around him, the people around him. If they manage to isolate him from his ideologies, in 10, 15 years, he might be in trouble as well. So it's time for now Egyptians to clean out the kitchen.
Let's talk about money. So you've been a professional squash player for 20 years. Have you made any money?
Thankfully, I don't have enough money to retire. We're not tennis players. We're not baseball players. Of course, when I was younger, in my younger 20s, I was probably richer than any of my richest friends in their 20s. I always look like we make money inversely. You make money when you're very young, and as you grow older and you reach the end of your career and you drop out the top 10 or top 20, top 30, then you start not making money. But I was thankful enough I had the right people around me. I made some good investments, and I've managed to save some bucks. I won't retire, but I've made it half my life without struggling, and hopefully, God willing, it's up to Him. I just keep on trying. For me, money is 30% of my life. I just need some money to spend on my kids, have a roof over my head, I'm happy. It doesn't matter how much I have in the bank.
But if you had some more money, what kind of car would you buy? What would be your favorite car to have parked out front of the Shabana house in Toronto?
Well, I'd have a couple of cars since I have 3 kids. I will have one for myself. I'll have a sports car, nice sports car. I'll have a Ferrari or a Porsche for myself, and then I'd have a 7-seater for the kids. Maybe an Escalade. I love cars.
And you'd have a driver for the kids.
Yeah, I'd have the driver for the 7-seater, but I wouldn't have a driver for me. Squash is such a fast game, right? The thrill you get and the rush you get from playing it, even in competition, it's a very fast game. So you'd find squash players are always attracted to that sort of rush and thrill. Like we were once playing a tournament in Bermuda, and I remember it was me, Gregory Gauthier, Jonathan Power, John White, Wael Hindi, Abbas. We were like 15 players, and we all had scooters. And we were basically drag racing around the entire island for the whole day.
At 35 miles an hour.
Yeah, 35 miles per hour. But it was just the thrill of racing and taking, even if it was a scooter, 35 kilometers per hour, even, or miles per hour. It was still a thrill, to have that race, and we'd stop at a beach, swim for a while, and race to the next beach. It's a thrill. It's a high intensity sport, so we're very intense people.
Do you think of yourself as a faithful person? Are you a person of faith, and is your family a family of faith? And how will that coexist in Toronto, where there's a strong Western culture, a Christian culture, multicultural in Toronto, but coming from Egypt?
This is a very honest interview, so I'm gonna be nothing but honest. I'm very faithful. I believe my religion is based on faith. I don't have any proof, nor does anybody have any proof that there is a God or prophets or anything. But as a Muslim, modern Muslim, I believe in God. I believe in all His prophets. I believe that man should do good more than evil, and those who do more good than evil have a better chance to go to heaven. My wife is the same. I'm bringing up my kids the same. I believe the further you are away from the Middle East, the better people they will have faith, because the closer to the Holy Land you are, this is where the problems are. People are fighting over land, over material substance. That's not what it's supposed to be about. So you would actually find the best types of people are people away from the conflict, away from the storm. And it's a melting pot even better, because this is what it's all about. It's about getting as much experience as you can from this world. You're only going to live once. And it's up to you to find what's good and what's bad and weigh it, and you will be judged accordingly. All humans are sinners, but in the same time, all humans are good. And you just try and do your best you can.
You talk about, traveling the world and being in city after city, year after year for so long. What's your favorite city?
I've been quite to a few places, but for me, each continent has a different flavor. Like you go to New York, you see the pace, and you see everybody walking around with something, like there's a plan. Everybody has a plan. Everybody's going somewhere, coming from somewhere. And it's just amazing if you just go to Grand Central Station or Grand Central Terminal or Times Square and you just sit down and watch the people. Everybody has a purpose. And it's amazing to see that every single person has a purpose. And you go to London, they have their flavor. You go to Hong Kong, there's their flavor. But I've loved every city I've been to. Very few places where I didn't feel like in awe, because every place has its people It's just it's an amazing world we live in.
And what about food? Where do you find your favorite foods around the world?
Favorite food? I have to say my favorite food comes from where my region is. I love Lebanese food. Lebanese food for me is just unbelievable. It's just the right textures, the right smells, the right tastes, the right chemistry. It's very light, it's very healthy. Just Lebanese food. It's a must for everybody to try. Okay, John, we'll start on how many years you've been on tour
As a player or
as a promoter. Your first tournament.
My first tournament was the 1992 Tournament of Champions. The first time we called it the Tournament of Champions, because that we called it that because it represented the merger between the old hardball organization, the WPSA, and what was ISPA, then the International Softball Tour. So we brought them together, formed PSA, Professional Squash Association, and we took the tournament that we were running in New York that was the WPSA Championships, and we rebranded it Tournament of Champions to signify these two groups coming together and that these were the champions.
Oh, so you were at that exact point when ESPA and PSA merged into one formation. And I think, would you say this was a comeback for squash after the Jahangir era, where squash was booming, and you had the Jonah Barrington, who was big in England, you had Jeff Hunt in Australia, you had those players, and then would you say that squash died in the 80s after those players?
Yeah, I actually even think then, I mean, if you look at that tournament, Jahangir Jansher was the top seed, Dittmar was the second seed, and then there were 8 hardball players, so Mark Talbot, myself, Ned Edwards, they were all in the draw. And, you know, as you probably remember, there were a couple of big tournaments then for like the 90s. You would come over and play Toronto and the US Open and the Tournament of Champions, but there wasn't a lot happening. You know, the tour sort of was kind of slow and sleepy, and those tournaments were putting up $50,000 or $60,000 of prize money. It wasn't a very strong time for a while. And I think it's now, actually, I mean, I think now if you look out at the tour and the prize money, it's regained its strength. Now seems to be the best time since those days of, you know, Jonah and Jeff and Jahangir.
Tournament of Champions. This tournament has been going on, like you said, for 92. As a player, we players consider the Tournament of Champions one of the biggest and most important and prestigious tournaments on the tour. What would be your dream route for making this tournament as big as it comes? Where do you envision the ToC, say, for example, if everything went your way and you can, finances is not an issue, venue not an issue, where do you see the Tournament of Champions, say, in 5 years, if everything you want to do can do?
I wish I could make Grand Central Terminal bigger. You know, I wish I could push the walls out and make more room for seats and exhibits. And the tournament is so entwined with Grand Central Terminal now. I mean, they're almost one, I think, that it's hard to think about, you know, would I move it to Yankee Stadium? You know, would we go to Madison Square Garden? And eventually, that's the goal. Eventually, we want thousands and thousands of people to be around world-class squash. I don't know. I mean, the Tournament of Champions is constrained, right? It's a small space, but it's beautiful. It's got a reputation now worldwide that's pretty special. I think this issue of prize money is the biggest thing. I mean, how do we get tournaments to the point where more people around the world say, I want my kid to be a squash player, or I want to be, you know, I want to develop squash players, because the world of a pro player is rewarding and you know, remunerative. And we're doing it. Let me take you back in time and ask you a question. I think it was sometime in the early 2000s, and it was in New York at the Tournament of Champions, and I had organized a sponsor clinic, or a sponsor pro-am, and you had a slot. You had the 5 o'clock slot to play with a guest, and you never showed up. And the next day you came to me and you said, John, I'm so sorry. You know I was supposed to be there. I was doing something else. I was distracted, and I'm sorry I missed it. I'll never miss it again. And you never have missed it again. In 14 years from then till now, you became one of the most responsible players in terms of all the things that happen around the court, not just on the court. you also became world champion around that time. Did you actually grow up at some point? Did you think you ever sort of matured as a human being and that allowed you to have this stellar career?
I think, yeah, I was always behind in my university years. I was a full-time student, so I lived like a full-time student, going to school 5 days a week, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, studying, study groups. When they go out to parties, I used to go out to parties. So squash took a back foot then. But then when I finished university, I think it was 2002, beginning of 2002, and then no job. Ranking was down to, I think, 40 in the world, so no sponsorships, no prize money. And I lived in Europe for a year. I lived in Amsterdam, so no help. And then it was okay, you can either live on the margins all your life and be nothing and just be nothing, drift, or actually put your foot down and say, I'm going to do this, give yourself 2-3 years, try my best. If it doesn't happen, my college degree is my insurance to go back. So that's when I decided to be a professional squash player, with its good and with its responsibilities as well. Like, the squash is the easy part, but the functions is important, the media is important, meeting people is important, and as you grow older, you actually benefit. I've benefited a lot from those type of meetings and the functions and the sponsors, because you meet people you would never have met. And most of those corporate sponsor hits, and these are very important people. They give you time and they're actually excited to see you. So why don't you take advantage of that? And it's all about meeting people and discussing. You might learn a thing or two from somebody who's already successful. I'm successful in my work. When I sit down for half an hour, 1 hour, somebody who's successful in his work, as much as he's learning from my squash, I could be learning from his experience. And this is what I learned. Like, you need to learn from every experience.
What's your favorite thing about the Tournament of Champions?
New York is amazing. Like, you spend a week in New York, it goes by like a snap of, like, you have no trouble. Every day you can eat the best food, any cuisine, whether it's Italian, French, European, Mexican, Indian. So the food is great. The Tournament of Champions itself, you have thousands of people watching every day. I have people I've never seen for the past 10 years. They'll be going from one place across country, taking the train from New York to Philadelphia or Boston, and they'd be walking by and they see the draw, they see my name, and they call me up. They're like, oh, I haven't seen you in 10 years. I've seen your name. So just the exposure of the tournament and just the experience, anything can happen in New York, anything. You can meet people, you can see something happening. You can win the tournament even.
Was that a surprise?
Yeah, this year was a surprise. I think 3 years ago, okay, let's start from the beginning. When I was 30, I started getting injured. I had knee problems. I got patellar tendonitis in both knees. 32, I managed to scrape away from those knee injuries. 33, I got slip disc hernia in my back, and my body was breaking down.
Well, you gained some weight too. You got a little heavy, not
Yeah,
heavy, but
and age and wear and tear, and just a combination of a lot of things. And then at 33, I really trained. I didn't play any tournaments from February to September. I had 5 months, and I changed my whole regimen of training. I started researching. I always been doing my fitness programs, my squash programs, but I added also my nutrition now. So I was my own fitness coach, I was my own squash coach, I was my own nutritionist. And I went on the internet, which you can find everything you need, and I researched a lot of things. I saw what other sports experts are doing, and I started talking to experts in my own field, whether they're fitness coaches, squash coaches, nutritionists, physios, and I just started learning and became a student again. I approached it the same way a student approaches university. And I put down the extra work, but the results weren't coming. Like, I think at 33, I was so fit. Honestly, I don't think, I was doing, just to give you an example, I was doing 50 sets of ghost court sprints, 1 minute on, 20 seconds off, non-stop. It was taking me 59 minutes. I was doing 59 minutes of continuous ghost sprints, up and down the court, hitting the four corners, 59 minutes. Heart rate, like
80% of max.
170, 160. I was so fit, but the results weren't coming. And it stayed like this for 2 years. To the extent that every time I would go to a tournament and I see one of those great legends of the game like Jonah, Barrington, or Jeff Hunt, or Jahangir. Those three especially, I saw them on 3 different occasions. I asked each one, I'm like, listen, man, I'm 33 years old. I'm as fit as I ever been, but I just can't get past the second round or quarterfinal. I mean, I can't do it. I don't want to retire, but it just seems there's no other option for me right now. And they all said the same thing. They said, are you enjoying it? Yes. Is your body breaking down? No. Then just hang in there, keep doing the same thing you're doing, and it will come. The results will come. 2 years later, I'm back in the top 5, hunting for that top spot. I've already won 2 titles. I've won the Tournament of Champions, which everybody was playing in. It was the 3rd time I won it. I'm competing today in the NetSuite San Francisco Open. I'm in my 3rd final of the year.
The grasshopper being
The grasshopper in Switzerland. I won that, beating a fellow top 10 player, Tariq Momin, who's peaking right now. He's 26 years old. He's in his prime. So, like you say, you talk to people, you might learn a thing or two. And this is what, when other people ask me to give advice, I don't make up the advice. I just say advice what I've heard. Trust nobody but people closest to you. Don't care what anybody says. If you feel it's right, just do it. As long as you're having fun, as long as you can do it till the wheels come off, keep doing it.
Amr, there's a television show here in America called Inside the Actors Studio, and it's a famous show, and they have all the famous stars, and there's a little closing thing they do at the end, so I kind of want to do it with you, which is, what's your favorite color?
Black.
And why?
It's very pure, and it's dark in the same time. For me, I like black, I like blue, but it just comes out with it. It's peaceful. When you go to sleep, it's all you see, right? People conceive black with evil sometimes. A black cat, for example, they look at with a black duckling, for example, but it's actually not. White is not actually. White can be surrender. It's not actually pure. You can look at it another way. So for me, it's just black. I feel comfortable around black. Like you see me, I'm wearing all black right now. You know, but I do like other colors. I appreciate
you chose a sport with a black ball.
with a black ball, exactly. Like I just like black because I feel peaceful around it. It's just peaceful. But I love colors. I love what red can do to you. I like the peacefulness of blue. I like the brightness of the yellow. But I just feel peaceful with black.
Do you have a favorite sound? When you wake up in the morning or you're on the street?
Being on the beach and the sound of waves. This is just the endless sounds of waves rolling over.
And what is your favorite swear word?
Damn it.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
That was a good interview, John.
That was good.
Yeah, man.
That was good. That was good.